My name is Eleanor Hart, and I am 72 years old. I live in a small brick house at the edge of a quiet little town. My husband, William, built this house himself when we were young and full of dreams. He laid every brick, painted every wall, and planted rose bushes along the front porch. Every spring, those roses bloom deep red, full and soft. Their scent fills the yard, reminding me of the flowers he used to bring when we were first courting. William was a kind man with strong hands and a gentle heart. We built a life together, slow and steady. We wanted children, but life had its own timing. For years, we waited, hoping. When I turned 37, we decided to adopt. That's how Michael came into our lives. A tiny baby, barely a few months old, wrapped in a blue blanket. I still remember the first time I held him. He looked up at me with those curious brown eyes, and in that instant, I knew. He was ours. From that day forward, our world revolved around him. Michael filled the house with laughter and stories, muddy shoes, and endless questions. William built him a small swing in the backyard. I would watch from the kitchen window as they laughed together, sunlight catching in Michael's hair. Time moved faster than I could understand. Years passed, and our little boy became a man. William grew older and weaker, and one autumn afternoon, he slipped away quietly in his sleep. I kept the house the same, the roses blooming every spring just as he left them. Now it's only me and the memories. And of course, Michael, my heart's pride. When Michael turned 35, he got a new job in the city. I was proud but afraid too. Before he left, he handed me a small box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a phone, simple, neat, with a green call button and a little screen that glowed when touched. His name was already saved on it. "Here, Mom," he said with that familiar, boyish grin. "Now we can talk anytime. Just press this green button and I'll answer." I held it like a fragile bird in my hand. I'd never used such a thing before. "Promise me you'll call every day," I said, "even if it's just for a minute." He laughed softly and squeezed my hand. "I promise, Mom. You'll hear my voice every day." The first week was beautiful. Every morning, I'd sit by the window with my cup of tea, waiting for the ringtone, a cheerful tune that made the whole house feel alive again. When it rang, my heart fluttered. Michael told me about his small apartment, his new job, the noise of the city streets. I could hear traffic, music, laughter in the background. He sounded happy, full of life. Sometimes I cooked his favorite meal, shepherd's pie with mashed potatoes, even though I was eating alone. I'd pretend he was sitting across the table telling me about his day. At night, I wrote in my diary, "My son's voice fills the house again." This phone is my candle in the dark, but slowly things began to change. One morning, the phone stayed silent. I thought maybe he was busy. I waited all day, then all evening. Nothing. The next morning, it rang. "Sorry, Mom," he said quickly. "Busy day at work." I forgave him. One missed day wasn't much. But then another day passed. Then 3. Then 5. The calls grew shorter. His voice sounded tired. Sometimes I heard music or laughter in the background. Other voices. "Who's there, Michael?" I'd ask. "Just friends, Mom," he'd say. "Don't worry." But of course I did. Mothers always do. Weeks turned into months. The silence between calls grew heavy. I still kept the phone close. On the chair when I swept the floor, in my pocket when I watered the plants, under my pillow at night. Sometimes it buzzed and my heart leapt, only to fall again when I saw it was a wrong number or a message from the phone company. Once I even answered a stranger's call, just to hear someone say, "Hello." I began writing to him in my diary instead. "Dear Michael, I made your favorite soup today. I wish you were here to taste it. Dear Michael, I saw a boy riding his bike past the house. He looked like you once did. Neighbors often asked, 'Has Michael visited recently?' And I always smiled and said, 'Yes, he came last week.' Sometimes lies are gentler than truth. Then came winter. It arrived early, with biting winds that made the house creak at night. I sat by the heater one evening, staring at William's photograph on the wall. His smile seemed to ask, "Why do you still wait, Eleanor?" And I whispered softly, "Because I promised him I would." Then one rainy evening, everything changed. The sky outside was gray, and rain hammered against the roof. I was sitting near the window, knitting a scarf, when the ringtone, that bright, cheerful tune, suddenly filled the room. My heart jumped. My hands trembled so much I almost dropped the phone. I pressed the green button quickly. "Michael," I said, breathless. There was a pause. Then a man's voice, calm, kind, said, "Ma'am, are you Mrs. Eleanor Hart?" "Yes," I said, gripping the phone. "Who is this? Is my son all right?" The man spoke gently. "I'm calling from St. Mary's Hospital in Greenfield. We found your number in a wallet. It belonged to your son." The world seemed to stop. Rain pounded harder on the windows. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Hart," he continued. "There was an accident about 2 months ago. He didn't survive. We tried to reach you sooner." 2 months. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook. The room blurred. I pressed the phone to my chest as if holding it tighter could bring him back. The man spoke again. Something about paperwork, belongings, but I couldn't hear a word. 2 months. 2 whole months I had been waiting for a call that would never come. I thought my son had forgotten me, but he was already gone. That night I didn't cry. I sat in the dark, holding the phone close to my heart. Its screen was black, but in my mind I could still see his smile. Bright, alive, teasing. The next morning I opened my diary and wrote, "Now I understand why my phone never rang. My son wasn't busy. He was too far away, farther than I could reach." A week later, a small package arrived from the hospital. Inside were his wallet, his wristwatch, and a photograph. The 3 of us in our garden years ago. William on one side, Michael on the other, and me in the middle, laughing. I placed the photo beside William's on the mantelpiece, above the fireplace. Then I put Michael's little phone beside them. Still charged, still waiting. Every morning since, I make tea for 2. Old habits die gently. I sit by the window, looking at the empty chair across from me, and whisper, "Good morning, Michael. How's the weather up there?" Sometimes when the wind passes through the curtains, I swear I hear someone softly call my name. I like to think it's him, trying to reach me not through the phone, but through the quiet spaces in the air. I still keep the phone on. I charge it every night before I sleep. Not because I expect it to ring, but because it reminds me that love doesn't end. It only changes shape. And maybe, one day, when my time comes, I'll hear that cheerful ringtone again. And this time, when I press the green button, it will be his voice waiting on the other side.